Welcome to Small Business, Big Network, the podcast for small business owners who want big results from their networking. I'm Liz Drury, a freelance voiceover artist who knows that if you're not working, then networking could help. Martin Whiskin is a voiceover artist who also runs networking events for creative people. The Creative Collective is an online networking group for anyone in the creative industries. Thank you very much for being my podcast guest today, Martin.
It's my absolute pleasure. Really happy to be involved. Thank you.
And it's lovely to interview a fellow voiceover artist because I just know that your audio quality is going to be superb.
Well, I hope so, yeah. When I first started online networking, I had a call with a photographer, and his webcam was so good looking. Not just him, but his visual. And I thought, that's him selling his photography skills.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm just using my webcam microphone here. I should really upgrade. So just for Zoom calls and things like that, now I'm using my pro stuff. So yeah,
Good
no
idea.
worries on that side. Hopefully today.
Now, as a fellow voiceover artist, I'm always interested to know how other people came to be in the industry. So what was your career path?
Well, I thought it was kind of maybe a little bit different to how other people might have got into voiceover. But the more voiceover people I meet, I don't think it is that strange after all. But I was a database manager for 20 years, just looking after lists of names and addresses of people that had bought stuff from junk mail catalogues, the sort of stuff that comes in the middle of newspapers and says, buy the trouser press for £5,
Yeah.
and the big slipper that you can put both feet in, that sort of stuff. But then in 2016, they started talking about GDPR laws. And obviously around that time, people were selling data left, right and centre to whoever they wanted without asking if they were allowed to. Not saying that we did that particularly, but just covering my back there. There was, when they start talking about getting permissions for all these names, when you've got lists of 20 million people, you can't go back to those 20 million people and say, "Oh, can we keep using your data to make money?" Because they all just would have said no.
Yeah.
So there was nothing really that a lot of businesses in that sort of sector could do about it. So in 2018, the company went down the pan, and I was just coming up to 40, and I thought, right, do you want to do data for another 2 decades, or is there something else out there?
Yeah.
And I've always done things alongside full-time jobs. So I was always in band. Well, I'm not anymore, but I was in bands for about 15 years.
Yeah.
Trying to be a rock star, failing, but trying, and that's what counts. And then I because of being in bands, I took up photography because bands need pictures of themselves, bit of web design, bit of video, and all that sort of stuff. But I realised quite quickly that what was good enough for punk bands wasn't quite good enough for the corporate level.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really able to sell that sort of skill. Now, I had some recording gear because we used to do demos and that sort of stuff, and I used to enjoy recording. So I thought, I wonder if I could do anything there, maybe record some singers or some acoustic acts, because I certainly haven't got a space big enough for full bands to come in and start, annoying the neighbours. So I think I must have been looking online for new recording gear, getting way too ahead of myself in this planning process, because Facebook started hitting me with adverts for new recording gear. But the one advert that stood out was record your own voiceovers from home. And I thought, okay, what's voiceover? And, well, it just sounded really exciting and interesting. So I thought, well, I haven't, in these few months of living the life of redundancy Riley, it was the first thing that really sort of grabbed my interest. And I thought, if I could make a living doing something creative, then wow, that'd be brilliant, because I've always had to have I've always had the creative itch.
Yeah.
I've always needed to scratch it with something. And if I could do that all day, every day, it'd be perfect.
Yeah.
So I started, it was with Gravy for the Brain, as I'm sure a lot of voiceover artists have heard of, with Peter Dixon, etc. And I really enjoyed it. Obviously, to start with, I'd never done anything like it before. I was never into drama at school, hated standing up in front of class and talking to people, didn't like going out on work dues because it meant talking to people. But yeah, I thought I'll give it a go. If it doesn't work, I'll go back to data. But eventually, it started to work.
Now, voiceover is a huge field. There's all sorts of different genres within it. Which kind of voiceovers do you tend to work in?
Mostly at the moment, it's telephony stuff, which I've kind of surprised myself with, because when I first started, I thought, right, commercials. That's what I want to do, commercials and maybe video games, because it just sounds the most fun.
Yeah.
And commercials, you think, yeah, I'm going to be on telly. And that's, who doesn't want that when they grow up? Well, I did, certainly. But I thought things like telephony and e-learning, I thought that just sounds far too boring. I'm just not interested. So I really sort of niched far too early. But as time went on, I started to get more work in, telephone answer messages, IVR and on hold, that sort of stuff. And it's my favourite kind of work now.
Yeah.
So I kind of regret, ignoring it right at the beginning, because I could have done lots more by now. But yeah, it's so telephony. I do some e-learning stuff, radio, and like explainer animations and your corporate videos, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think when you start, you don't know what your niche should be, and I think a bit like you. I did a bit of everything, but I still do a bit of everything. But you don't find out what your niche is for a while until you see that pattern of what you keep getting booked for, and then you think, aha, that's what people like me for, so that's what I should target. But it takes a while, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, and I think that's probably the same with a lot of like creative businesses. I've spoken to photographers and videographers about this exact same thing, and they all say, to start with, I was very much a jack of all photos, that sort of thing. Yeah. And then they either direct themselves to wedding or portraits, that sort of stuff. Yeah. But yeah, it's an interesting thing to go through, I think.
Yeah. So are you able to name drop any well-known businesses that you've done work for?
Yeah, I did some a piece for Lego, which my son was obviously delighted with, even more so than me, I think. I've done Costa.
Yeah.
Arsenal Football Club, Mercedes, NHS. That one actually was last year, and it was kind of during the time when everyone was still very hot on praising the NHS, and it's something that I'd wanted to do since I started voiceover. Really, was to do something for the NHS, and when I did, big tick in that column, and it just felt really nice to lend my voice to something that at that time of our lives was so in the forefront of people's minds.
Yeah, sometimes we get to voice things that are really important, don't we?
Absolutely. Other times not so much.
Yeah.
But things that no one will ever hear unless you work for a specific department in a specific company.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you get asked the same question that I do. Where will I have heard you? Well,
that is There's that one. Where would I heard you? And do you do impressions?
Yes. Do you do impressions, Martin?
No. How about you?
No. There we are. That's cleared that up.
Yeah. Hopefully, let's put that one to bed now forever.
Now, as well as being a voiceover artist, you also run something called the Creative Collective. So tell me about that. What is it?
Well, it's a networking group for creative businesses or creative individuals. And it was born from really 2 years of online networking with all types of business. And I've got absolutely nothing against that. And I loved it. I met so many businesses doing that and got some great contacts and friends from it. But when you're pitching to, accountants, mortgage brokers, all that sort of stuff, week in, week out about voiceover, you have to go through this whole process of teaching them what voiceover is, and then just waiting until they're either getting a video done or they finally come round to the idea of having a telephone message, rather than themselves doing it in the toilet so no one else can hear them doing it, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's where the idea came from. I thought, surely there's a way to sort of cut down this middleman thing. I can ask an accountant, do you know a video guy? And it's probably the same one as everyone else in that networking group knows. Yeah. So I asked around a few of my local video and other creative connections, and no one knew of a creative networking group.
Mm.
And I sort of put it to bed for a while because I thought, well, I haven't got time really to start one by myself. Bit more time went on, and I asked someone else, and he said, I don't know, why don't we start one? And that was literally it. We set a date and aimed for it, and that's all it took, was just someone else that I knew I could do it with to lighten that load.
Yeah.
So the idea behind it is that creative businesses come in and say a little bit about themselves, but really it's about a supporting, welcoming community where you know that you can go and get advice or help if you need to, but ultimately to try and get people to collaborate. So as an example, we had, I think on the first meeting, we had 8 videographers.
Yeah.
And now, normally, if you put 8 videographers in a room, they might think, well, this is a bit, I'm not,
Yeah.
fight sort of thing for the work. And I've heard people say that, videographers talk like that. But one of them, in her pitch, she said, we've got too many videos, we need someone to help us edit.
Yeah.
So those other seven videographers, all their ears pricked up and, work here.
Yeah.
And then 2 guys who'd never met before met on that meeting. They had a follow-up, and they've just signed off a project to make videos for a local council for quite a bit of money together.
Brilliant.
And that's exactly what we're aiming for.
Yeah.
They could have gone in and pitched individually,
Yes.
but instead they went in together and, lighten the load, and they're doing it as a team, and that's exactly what we're about.
Yeah. So how long has it been going now?
I think this week we had our 9th one, and it's every 2 weeks, so I think that's just over 3 months,
Yeah.
if my maths is correct.
And so what's the format of the meetings?
So we tried to do it a little bit different to like your standard sort of online networking group. And I know it was quite a task coming up with something that was a bit different because everyone's done everything. Online networking has been booming for a couple of years. So we start off with, we go straight into after an intro, of course, just to tell people about what the meeting's about. We have a breakout room, random breakout room. Then everyone comes back and we do 15-second pitches. So all it is
15
literally
seconds, yeah.
15
like that.
seconds, yeah. So it's name, what you do, and what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And then Ben, my co-host, he recaps that, so everyone gets a chance to sort of double think about what that person needs.
Yeah.
And then after that, that's just half of the people in the room get to go to do that. And then we have a one-to-one breakout room, so people all get paired off. Then it comes back, and we have what's it called? The Wheel of Names. And we have a coloured wheel where everyone's name is on it, and whoever it lands on gets a 1-minute pitch. No one else gets a 1 minute apart from, it's like a silly prize, I guess.
Yeah.
And actually, I'd say we tried to make it different to other groups. I've seen that on other groups, but I thought it would suit this sort of fun, collective, because it's a fun, fast-paced group, so it sort of fits the feel. Then after that, another one-to-one. Then after that, and I make sure the people don't have the same one-to-ones before.
Yeah.
So you're meeting 2 people for an extended conversation straight away. And then we go back, and the other half of the room does their 15-second pitch. And then we do final breakout room where people can choose who they want to talk to.
Yeah.
So it's always moving. And we like to think that with the addition of the one-to-ones as well as the group breakouts, it's just changed it up a little bit. And the fast-paced intros where people are specifically asking for something as well.
Yeah. So how long is the whole meeting?
A maximum of 90 minutes, but we normally finish a little bit early.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you obviously did other sorts of networking before you created your own network. Do you think that creative people approach networking differently to, say, the solicitors or the accountants that you might find in a normal networking meeting?
I think so. I think we have to, because taking your examples, everyone knows what an accountant does. Everyone knows what a solicitor does. But when it comes to voiceover, not many people, certainly in my experience when I first started networking, not many people had ever met a voiceover artist.
Yeah.
So they didn't know how to apply it to their business.
Yes.
So you have to go through this whole sort of process of each time you see these people telling them a different thing about voiceover.
Yeah.
Trying to say, you could do it, you could use it for this, or this, or this, or this. And I think that's the same for, it's probably a bit easier for photographers because, you could go into a networking group and say, I do headshots.
Yeah.
And if a business needs headshots, it's a win. But if not, they'll remember you because you do headshots. But there's so much, I think, just like the education of it.
Yes.
So I think we have to approach it differently.
Yeah. And do you think that's what puts creative people off networking? Because I don't meet that many creative people at the networking events that I go to. Do you think that's why they don't come? Because they think, oh, I've got to explain myself first.
I'm not sure. I didn't really know networking existed before I started my own business, because I'd never had to. I just went to work and did the job, and that was it. In a very much dog eat dog world, everyone was fighting against each other. And when I first started my business, that's how I started. I didn't want to talk to any other voiceover artists, because I thought, well, I don't want them to take my work, and they're going to think I'm taking their work.
Yeah.
Could you repeat the question? I went off on a tangent then.
It was about what you think puts creative people off going to networking meetings.
I wonder sometimes whether it's because some creatives are introverts. I think there's a lot of creatives who just aren't comfortable in that selling sort of environment. I know networking isn't really the hard sell, but you're putting yourself front and center and talking about what you do. And I will admit I found that very uncomfortable to start with. I just think it's something that creatives don't expect that they need to do, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, and like you say, if you haven't come from a business corporate kind of background where you've had to network for your employer, let's say, you might not realise that these things are out there and it's something that you need to do.
Yeah, unless it's a very specific group. I know there's a filmmakers group in Margate, and that's very successful. They have 50 to 60 people go to their meetings, but they're all a filmmaker might be looking for a sound recorder, and there will be one there. So that's really good links. But in terms of you're 100% right. Finding creatives on these events is difficult.
Yeah, yeah, and I love the fact that you're all about collaboration within your network, because so many people, as you sort of alluded to earlier on, do think there's so much competition out there, and I don't want to be in the same room as my competition because they're going to be taking the work, and that just isn't how it works, is it?
I did a post on LinkedIn, I think it was, talking about collaborations a few weeks ago, and how I touched on it just then, how because I came from that corporate background, I was very much, right, it's me against the world. Don't talk to anyone, just work hard and it will happen. But it didn't. And it was through online networking, actually, that I started to realise that people were doing stuff together and using each other's services. And I really saw how important that was. But yeah, back to this post that I did on LinkedIn talking about that. Someone replied with the phrase, "Other businesses aren't your competition. They're your support network."
Yeah.
And that just highlighted it for me. I thought, wow, that is perfect. And I've spoken about that quote a few times now in different things.
Yeah.
It just sums it up brilliantly.
Yeah. And I do think that the voiceover world is pretty supportive, really. I've found it to be that way anyway.
Yeah, 100%. Just going back to Creative Collective as an example, I think on one event we had 6 voiceover artists on there, and but there was one who was a Scottish female, and I can't do that.
No.
So why would I stop her from coming?
No.
There was a northern female as well, another guy from London, and a Scottish male as well. And I thought, well, this is brilliant. There's a market for everyone.
Yes.
Even if there was someone who sounded, common like me, then there's work. I believe there's work for every voice artist. You just have to find it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've mentioned some of the kinds of creatives that come. You've got voiceover artists, you've got videographers, you've got photographers. Who else do you have in the room?
Lots of different things. So we've got someone who does graphic design, websites. We've got a marketing agency, so they deal with all like copywriting and stuff like that. We've had authors, publishers, a ghostwriter. This week we had our first opera singer, which was just phenomenal. So we've had other types, so actors, voice artists, obviously. And yeah, it's just, and other things like people who actually make stuff, so jewellery makers, knife makers, things like that. So we're really looking for anyone who does something creative, whether that's with a voice or a digital, like a video or music, or we've had musicians as well, or a physical product. Everyone, because we feel like these people, and I'm not trying to alienate any other type of business here, but creative people thrive in a group of creative people.
Yeah. And are there any creative sectors that you haven't attracted yet that you would like to?
Well, I asked someone the other day about I put around in the newsletter. Sorry, if anyone knows a comedian, because like performance for me is creative as well. They're writing their jokes and they're honing their craft. So if we had a comedian or a magician or a puppeteer, something like that, something that's just a little bit different, I think that'd be brilliant. Yeah.
Right. So if any of those kinds of people are listening, well, any creative people at all who are interested in coming along to the Creative Collective, how can they find out more, Martin?
We have a website, and it's the creativecollectivenetworking.co.uk. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. It's just Martin Whiskin. I don't think there's another Martin Whiskin in the world.
I'm sure there's not. Not one that sounds as good as you anyway, Martin.
Thank you.
That's been brilliant. Thank you very much. And I'm hoping to come along to one of your meetings very soon.
Brilliant. Be good to have you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to Small Business, Big Network. If you found this podcast useful, please do rate, review and subscribe. And don't forget to share it with the rest of your network too.